And we back at it, man. Initiation, part 3. China's well-kept house sat smack in the middle of the block on 80th Street, our newest possession and our latest recruitment drive. I would imagine that our aggressive conquering of territories in those days and still today resemble Hitler's sweep through Europe. The apartment complex on the left of the end block of Normandy Avenue became our base of this block. We have since referred to it as the Blue Apartments. We had lost the White Apartments on 65th Street to the Bloods while I was a prisoner at youth camp. The battle, I'm told, was fierce, but not worth the price. Although we suffered no fatalities, our wounded and MIA list grew steadily. Besides this, the Brims who the battle was with had called in reinforcements from the Rolling 20s Bloods. The White Apartments thus passed to the Reds. New ground was sought. 80th Street was just one street of many that fell under our jurisdiction. The mechanics involved in taking the street or territory is not unlike any attempt, I would assume, on behalf of an early Euro-American settler. Send in a scout, have them meet the natives, test their hostility level, military capabilities, needs, likes, dislikes. Once a military presence is established, in come the citizens, in this case gang members, whose are not persuaded by and who those are not persuaded by a lofty presence will be persuaded by military might. All who are of fighting age become conscripts. The set expands, and so does the territory. Sometimes there is resistance, but most of the time, our efforts are successful. China's younger brother was one of our first recruits from 80th, recommended by China and sponsored by me. He became Lil GC. Listen now, Kody, being continued in a deep, verbatim tone, pronouncing every syllable of every word. You have to stop pussyfooting around with your life. We are quickly becoming a technological country, and computers are going to overtake manual labor. What that means is a shot rang out, cutting Ben's monologue off. For an instant, I thought he himself had been hit. He was belly down on the floor. Another shot resounded, this time a shotgun blast. Jumping to my feet, I headed to the front door. I opened it and ran out onto the porch. My heart was pumping, my adrenaline rushing and urging me on, looking first to the right towards the Blue Apartments and then to the left in direction of Hollandale. I spotted a buggy Cutlass creeping down the street, a shotgun barrel in the passenger hand, barely visible through the open window. Jumping and creeping through Charlie's plants on the porch, which grew in huge flower pots, I darted into the street, pulling out my .25 Chrome automatic, recently put on this set by a new recruit. I began firing at the car. The car sped away. I kept firing at the rear as it turned left on Normandy Ave. I turned and bolted towards Hollandale to assess the damage of their drive-by. Once I reached the corner, I heard Dee Dee, Butchie's sister, hollering. At first, I couldn't make out what she just was saying. She said in the midst of escalating confusion, civilians had come out of their homes and homeboys were starting to gather in front of China's house. Then it dawned on me, monster, here they come, they're coming back. Damn, I was out of shells. No sooner had I turned to run and take cover, I think I'd be shot in the back. And then black and white police car hit the corner and all but ran into the shooter's car. The police pulled their weapons and ordered the occupants out the car and face down in the street. We all gathered to identify our enemies, not to help the police, but for our own intelligence. There was 3 occupants, 38 service revolver, a pump shotgun, sawed off at the barrel for spraying effect, and sawed off at the stock for stealth and close combat. One shooter we knew, bank robber, and the other 2 were obviously new recruits, probably putting in work for the first time. They were members of the Rolling 60s. My response went virtually unnoticed by the police, though I saw 2 holes in the passenger door. No one inside was hit. The shooters were taken away amid death threats and shouts of revenge. In the absence of the police, the car was promptly tore up and set ablaze. 10 minutes later, the impound came and scooped up the remains. On my trek by China's house, on my way to Blue Apartments, I counted Dot and Ben on their front yard. Kody, Dot started at me first. You don't go running towards no gunfire, you hear me? You could have been killed. Yes, ma'am, I replied, grateful that they hadn't seen me firing on the car. Apparently, Dot had dived for cover as well, joining Ben on the floor. I just thought that one of my friends had been hurt. Well, goddamn it, you ain't not no Superman, boy. Ben said, "You could have not possibly helped anyone in such a crisis." He pronounced crisis like Nixon speaking on the energy crisis. You're right, Ben. I lost my head. I pulled and put one foot in front of the other, trying to exit the conversation and get to the blue apartments to mount retaliation. "Where are you going now?" Dot resorted in genuine concern. "Ain't nothing but police out here." "To the apartment to check on my little brother." I lied and kept stepping. At the apartments, I was congratulated by the homies for a proper response, but I shook that flattery off. Shit, I wanted to know how, after I had alerted everyone to enemy presence, the shooters were still able to make it off the block, come back around, and shoot again. Heads dropped and gestures of dismay abounded. I looked over in disgust, thinking that I was the only serious one in this. For the past 5 years, I had gotten up every morning, ironed my gear, thoughts of nothing else but doing propaganda for the set, and I had did this with all the zeal of religious fanatic. Until I was 9 years old, we had lived on Hillcrest Drive in Crenshaw District. This is a modest middle-class neighborhood of block after block, sprawling lawns, well-paved streets, and shady trees. My mother and stepfather had lived there since 1965. The neighborhood is now the Rolling 60s hood. Up until 1980, my mother still shopped at Buddha Market on Slauson Avenue, owned and operated by the Orientals. In the summer of 1980, my mother had asked me to accompany her to Buddha Market to shop. I refused with vigor, but my resistance was in vain. My mom didn't understand the complexity of our conflicts with other gangs. We were trying to kill each other. Up until that, she was always took my spiel about our seriousness as melodramatic exaggeration. I went to Buddha Market with her that day, and I weighed 2 pounds extra. I had a Browning 9mm with a 14 shots, and it was an unusually bright afternoon. And I recall feeling light and almost happy and content, actually. Riding up Slauson past Crenshaw, I remember teasing and cringing as I read line after line of their graffiti on the walls and buildings, amusing myself. I jokingly asked Mom to pull over so I could cross them out. In return, I got a "you damn fool" look. Then I noticed Mom's face cloud over with a look I could took as utter helplessness. Ironically, I never gave stopping or inkling of a thought. This was my career, my calling, as church folks say when they does one thing real well. We traveled further west past West Boulevard, passing our old street. We both looked right briefly, turning into in Buddha's Market parking lot. I tightened my belt and gave my appearance the once over. G down, short for gangster down, dressed in gang attire, my gear. I had on blue khaki pants, white canvas all-stars, and a blue sweatshirt with my hair in braids. Brownie's brown garden gloves worn by gang members for fighting and shooting hung halfway out my right pocket, and the blue flag hung out my left. Crips wore their left ear pierced and their flag in their left black pocket, bloods on the right. What the fuck? These niggas got real uniform structures. They ass though. "It's not a rag, Mom. Why don't you tuck in that old rag?" Mom blurted out while she gave herself the once over. Gave herself the once over. "It's not a rag, Mom. It's a flag," I said, wishing she would for once see my seriousness here. This was not some awkward stage of my life. This was my job to me. And I was employed full time, putting in as much overtime as possible. Life from that vantage point seemed to be a one big test of show and prove, pick and stick. Mom went through her usual greetings with the Orientals. They had known each other for years. I was on point. Not only was I in jeopardy, but I had Mom with me. Who was I sure who would try to talk any enemy down and doing an about face? Fat fucking chance of that happening, I remember thinking. "You remember my son Kody, don't you?" Yes, I heard the Oriental woman saying amid other comments such as, "He's so big, so strong looking." After a few other exchanges, we started down the aisle. "Canned goods, no interest here." "Mom, I'm going over here to the cereal section," I said, and stepped quickly so she couldn't call me back. Turning the corner at the end of the aisle, I felt relieved to be alone, both for my safety and Mom's safety. I had every intention of going to the cereal section when I was distracted by a nice-looking young lady in produce. I had made a beeline for the vegetables. That's when I saw him. Damn! Enemy, enemy. My adrenaline alarm was going off. Sonic booms of my heartbeat filled my ear. My throat got tight and my moodiness became automatic. We both reached for our waistbands simultaneously. The young lady had still not even looked up from her inspection of the vegetables, yet the tranquil surroundings of her otherwise routine shopping trip were about to explode around her. I managed to drop and drew first. He was still drawing his weapon. Shit. Had this been a Beretta or Barnaby Jones, he would have thrown his hands up and surrendered, but not bothering to aim, I fired. Boom! Confusion and chaos swept the aisles like buckshot screams following in quick succession. Damn, I missed. I fired again, hit him in the torso. The bullet knocked him back and his weapon discharged in the air. He had what sounded like a 22, a small caliber weapon. Folks know that now. Two weapons were involved, a loud .9mm and his not so loud 22. I shot him 3 more times to create an atmosphere of intensity that turned away in search of my mother. Since my encounter with the drive-by shooters, where I had emptied my clip, when I was left vulnerable, I had learned to keep exit or safety shells. Hey, this nigga, I shot him 3 more times to create an area of what the fuck? Like, he know he wasn't thinking this complex when he was a kid. Who wrote this shit for this nigga? Running aimlessly about frantically looking for my mom. I totally forgot I had the gun in my hand. I tucked it while jogging down the household appliance aisle. Not finding her there, I panicked, remembering how I had been locked in the surplus store. I made my way then to the door, and then among the other scared to death shoppers, I found Mom. She was still grief-stricken, and her nerves was in shambles. I grabbed her arm and ushered her away from the crowd. Boy, was that you? She was hoping against hope that it wasn't. Kody, what happened? I had made no attempt to explain. My sole intent was a timely escape. We drove silent, block after block. We never even looked at each other. Back across Western, I began to breathe better as I finally reflected on what I had done. Fuck him. He was going to shoot me. I justified my shooting of him with self-defense. This thing was very dangerous. We all knew each other. It's like the CIA and the FBI was going to war. There's no escaping one-sided. I thought for sure I'd be captured for this one. After all, the Oriental knew me, and folks had seen me with the strap. However, my arrest was not forthcoming. After getting out of camp in 1979, I met Tamu through my brother Kerwin and sister Candace, who all worked together at 32nd Street Market. Tamu was a look tall, graceful, with a smile that shouted for attention. I was naturally attracted, however, she was older than I, in fact. We had nothing in common. She was tall, I was short. She had a job, I was an armed robber. She liked jazz, I liked funk. She had a car. I had a bicycle. She was a drug and alcohol free. I smoked pot and PCP and drank beer. We clicked immediately. Today, she'll say she didn't chase me, but in actuality, she did. When she and I began to go steady, she let me drop her off at work and keep her car until she got off. Until her shift was over. From 3 p.m. to 11 p.m., my attraction was not just physical, but to the fact that she was not of my world. She was a civilian. To me, that was most appealing. She was not just because of me. She was not with me just because of my reputation or clout, but for me as an individual. So when I went around her, I would present myself as Kody without the monster persona. I'd take my shades off, tuck my flag, and not let her know when I was strapped. And I would also douse myself with some sort of expensive cologne my mom had brought me. Later, Tamu had said I had been using too much, but that at the time she didn't want to embarrass me, for she saw I was trying to impress her. I would take Tamu up to the market and kiss her goodbye, drive to the corner, make sure she was inside the store and out of view, then reach for my glove compartment. I'll pull out my flag, put on my murder ones, dark shades, also called locos, button up the top button on my shirt, put my strap on my lap, and drive to the hood. I did so many ride-by, drive-up, drive-throughs, and chase-aways in her car. It's no wonder she ain't go to jail or either get shot. Like everybody assumed, the car was stolen. Then, too, we left few witnesses. Tim and I continued to date up until the time she told me she was pregnant. Pregnant? I asked in belief. Yes, pregnant. She replied matter-of-factly. I felt so young in that moment. Just a baby myself. I panicked. Anything but a child. These had gotten too serious. Out of hand, I'm beginning to dodge Tamu. This nigga bogus as hell. So you telling me you catch all these bodies. You done did all these shootings. Your ass scared of a jit. I guess, my dude. Tell her I ain't here. I would tell my family members when she called or came by. Mom, however, adored her. And then they would sit and talk for hours. Often I'd come in from a hard day of campaigning, shotgun slung over my shoulder, and Tamu and Mom would be in the front room talking. I acknowledged them with a nod, then head down the hall to my room and fall out in dead sleep. I began not to care if she saw me as a monster or not. I tried to push her away with the raw reality of who I was. She wasn't budging. Besides, Mom had hated China for reasons I never knew. Perhaps because she saw that she and I were on the same path, whereas Tamu could be a positive influence in my life. I wasn't by any means ready to have a child, though to me that means settling down, another obligation. I already had pledged my allegiance to the set, so I was in a rough spot. I had picked either Tamu and my orborn child or my career in the set. This ate away at me for several months. Sure, I liked Tamu, but not enough for to forbid my stature in the set. All I had worked for so hard to build would be left to dangle in the wind, unfinished. Enemies I had thought I would run over. Hood if no one railed the troops. Then, too, I felt an obligation to Tamu. She hadn't got pregnant alone. Besides, the child would be a totally innocent party in this matter and deserved a fair chance. In those months of consternation, I shot more than a few civilians as my concentration continued broken with zigzag thoughts of my future. On July 28, 1980, I got a call from the hospital. I'm in labor. I had Tamu's voice squeak over the phone. Are you coming here? Yeah, I'm coming. I responded as all my confusion and indecisiveness blowed up. Over over the brink of comprehension, I got my coat out of the closet and complete my days not knowing exactly what to do. I reached under my pillow and took hold of my 9mm, checking the clip, 14 shots. I was past the days of half-loaded weapons. Shit had escalated to the point where if individuals were being sought for extermination. I, of course, was on at least 3 sets most wanted lists. Walls told a story. In fact, enemies sprayed painted my name on walls and death threats more often than I did to advertise. Wearing my fresh Pelton shirt, bells with khakis and biscuits, old man comfort shoes, the first shoe officially dubbed the Crip shoe. I threw on my black bomber jacket and stepped out into a warm summer night. I walked up the city Ninth Street and Western and took a car at gunpoint. Still in a state of indecision, I drove toward the hospital. I intentionally drove through the 60s hood. I was hoping to see one of them before I had made it through. And what luck did I have? There was bank robbers slipping, not paying attention, not being vigilant, hard on the side of the street. I continued past him and I turned at the next corner, parked and waited. He would walk right to me, sitting in the car alone, waiting to push yet another enemy out of this existence. I reflected deeply on my place in this world, about things that were totally outside of my grasp or comprehension. Thoughts abounded. I never knew I could conjure up. In retrospective, I could honestly say that in those moments before a bank robber got to the car, I felt free. Free, I guess, because I had made a decision about my future. Hey, I called out the bank robber leaning over the passenger side. Got a light? Yeah, he replied, reaching into his pants pocket for a match or lighter. I never found out which. I guess he felt insecure because he dipped his head into the window level to see who was asking for a light. Say your prayers, motherfucker. Boom! Before he could mount a response, I blasted him twice in the chest, started the car, and drove home to watch Benny Hill. Banging was my life. That was my decision. This nigga bogus.